So we've got the van up. It's important that you jack it up by the jack points, but then we actually have 2 jack stands and a 2x4 supporting the subframe. The 2x4 helps distribute the load. But we have to do this so that the engine hoist, so that the legs can go in around it. If you use the original jack point, the engine hoist will hit that. So that's the best way to jack it up when pulling the engine out through the cab. Next, we're gonna take off the door, and we're basically gonna remove the marker light, the trim piece, and then that will allow us to unplug the connector for the door harness, and then it's just as simple as unbolting the hinges. So the door is off. You can see that hole is where the harness comes through. We actually had to pull the dash apart, or pull the glove box out to get to the connector back there. You can see the hole, but not the connector. You know, we got all this room to pull that guy out. So the next thing we did is remove this sheet metal dust cover. This goes between the transmission and the oil pan there. You can now see the flex plate or flywheel, and that'll basically just give us the access we need to rotate it and unbolt the torque converter bolts. So here's a tip for pulling the engine. We're actually putting it in, but for the D4BF swap, you got to change out the oil pan anyway. And taking out the oil pan and the sump and the flex plate or flywheel gives you a bunch of clearance to make it through the cab. That combined with keeping your balancing bar as close to the top of the valve cover will give you a lot of clearance for your hoist, especially on a low roof. So if you can hoist it up in the car, then take off your oil pan, sump, flywheel, that'll make it a lot easier to pull the motor out through the cab. All right, so engine's in the cab. We have the lift all the way up, and just finished putting back in the original sump tube and bolting on the flex plate since we made it through the door. Jason's scooping up the oil pan, and we're gonna crouch down under there and stick that sucker on, and then drop her all the way in and connect all the bits back together.